Obstinacy is fun, or attachment is fun, or for somebody it's also selfishness. Essay by Hermann Hesse, into English from Volker Omeisloter, June 2020. There's one virtue, I love it very much, only one. It's called obstinacy or attachment. I can't think much of all the many virtues that we read about in books and hear from teachers. And yet, one could encompass all the many virtues that man invented with a single name. Virtue is obedience. The only question is who to obey. The attachment is also obedience. But all other virtues that are so popular and praised are obedience to laws given by people. It is only the attachment that does not ask about these laws. However, is stubborn, obeys another law. A single, absolutely sacred one. The law in itself, the sense of one's own. It's a shame that the attachment is so little popular. Does he enjoy any respect? Oh no, it even applies to a vice or an unfortunate bad habit. It is only called by its full beautiful name where it bothers and arouses hatred. Incidentally, real virtues always disturb and arouse hatred. So Socrates, Jesus, Giordano Bruno, and all other obstinate people. Where you have the will to some extent to really see self-willfulness as a virtue or as a pretty ornament, you weaken the rough name this virtue has, if possible. Character or personality that doesn't sound as bitter and almost vicious as obstinacy. That sounds more hopeful. Even originality can be put up with if necessary. Originality, of course, only with tolerated nerds, with artists and such olds. In art, where the attachment does not cause any noticeable damage to capital and society, it is even considered originality very much. In the artist, a certain attachment is considered desirable. You pay him well. Otherwise, in today's language, character or personality is understood to mean something extremely tricky, namely a character that is present and can be shown and decorated, but that carefully bends under foreign laws on any important occasion. Character is the name of a man who has some of his own hunches and opinions, but does not live according to them. He only let through very carefully that he thinks differently, that he has opinions. In this gentle and vain form, character applies to the virtue even among the living. But if someone has his own hunches and really lives according to them, he loses the praising testimony character and is only awarded stubbornness. But let's take the word literally. What does stubbornness mean? That which has its own meaning, or not? Everything on earth has its own meaning, absolutely everything. Every stone, every grass, every flower, every shrub, every animal grows, lives, does and feels only according to its own sense. And it is based on this, that the world is good, rich and beautiful. That there are flowers and fruits, that there are oaks and birches, that there are horses and chickens, tin and iron, gold and coal, all come from the fact that every little thing in space has its sense. its own law carries within itself and follows its law completely, safely, and unwaveringly. There are only two poor, cursed beings on earth who are not granted the right to follow this eternal call and to be like this, to grow, to live, and to die as the deeply innate sense commands them. Only man and the pet he tempted or condemned not to follow the voice of life and growth, but to any laws that are set up by people and that are broken and changed by people from time to time. And that's the weirdest thing. Those few who disregarded the arbitrary laws in order to follow their own natural laws, they were mostly condemned and stoned, but afterwards they, just like them, were revered forever as heroes and liberators. The same mankind who praises and demands obedience to their arbitrary laws as the highest virtue among the living, the same mankind in their eternal pantheon includes precisely those who defied that and preferred to give up their lives rather than being untrue to their own purpose. The tragic, that wonderfully high, mystical and holy word that is so full of showers from the mythical human youth, and that every reporter abuses so namelessly every day, the tragic means nothing else than the fate of the hero, who is based on the fact that he follows his own star, contrary to the traditional laws. Because of this, and only because of this, mankind always opens up the knowledge of its own meaning. Because the tragic hero, the headstrong, shows the millions of ordinary people, the cowards, again and again that disobedience to human stages is not a raw arbitrariness, but loyalty to a much higher, more sacred law. In other words, the human herding senses, above all, demands adaptation and submission from everyone, but it does not reserve its highest honor to the tolerant, the fig, the docile, but rather than the stubborn, the heroes. Just as the reporters misuse the language when they call every industrial accident in a factory tragic, which for them, the buffons, is synonymous with unfortune, so fashion is no less wrong when it speaks of the heroic death of all the poor butchered soldiers. This is also a favorite word of the sentimental, especially those who stayed at home. The soldiers who fall in the war are certainly worthy of our greatest sympathy. They have often done and suffered tremendously, and in the end they paid with their lives. But that is why they are not heroes. As little as the one who was just a simple soldier and was shouted at like a dog by the officer, who suddenly becomes a hero through a killing bullet. The idea of whole masses, millions of heroes, is in itself absurd. The hero is not the obedient, good citizen and obligatory. Only the individual can be heroic, who has made its own sense, his noble natural attachment to his destiny. Fate and soul are names of one term, said Novalis, one of the deepest and least known German spirits. But it is only the hero who finds the courage to face his destiny. If the majority of people have the courage and stubbornness, the earth would look different. Our paid teachers, the same ones who praised us so much for the heroes and obstinates of early times, say that everything would go haywire. They have and do not need evidence. In reality, life would flourish richer and higher among people who independently follow their inner law and meaning. In their world, some scolding words and some quick cheeks would perhaps go unpunished, which must be employed by venerable state judges today. There would also be manslaughter every now and then, despite all the laws and punishments. Doesn't that happen today? But some terrible and inexplicable, sad, insane things that we see thriving in the midst of our so well-ordered world would then be unknown and impossible. For example, war of nations. Now I hear the authorities say, "You preach revolution," another mistake. That is only possible among hurt people. I preach attachment, not overthrow. How should I wish revolution? Revolution is nothing more than war. Like this, it is a continuation of politics by other means. But the person who once felt the courage to be himself and heard the voice of his own destiny is no longer the least bit interested in politics, whether it is monarchical or democratic, revolutionary or conservative. He cares about other things, like the deep, glorious, good, willful attachment of every blade of grass. Its attachment is directed at nothing others than their own growth, selfishness, if you want. This selfishness alone is completely different from the disruptible one of the money collector or the ambitious of power. The person with the attachment, it's not looking for money or power. He does not scorn these things because he is a virtuous man and resigned altruist. On the contrary. But money and power and all the things for which people torture and shoot each other in the end are of little value to the self-willed person, the stubborn. He only appreciates one thing, the mysterious power within himself. That means living and helping him grow. This strength cannot be sustained, increased or deepened by money and the like, because money and power are inventions of distrust. However distrusts the life force in its core, who lacks it must compensate it with such substitutes as money. Those who have confidence in themselves, who want nothing more than to experience their own destiny purely and freely in themselves and let it swing out, think those overestimated, overpaid aids to subordinate tools, the possession and use of which it is pleasant but can never be decisive. Once you have recognized them and found some of them within, the many best recommended virtues all become strangely doubtful. Patriotism is one of them. I have nothing against him. He puts a larger complex in place of the individual, but he is only really valued as a virtue when the shooting starts. This naive and so ridiculously inadequate means of continuing politics The soldier who shoots enemies to death is always considered to be the greater patriot than the peasant who cultivates his land as well as possible, because the latter has its own advantage. And strangely, in our tricky morality, the virtue that is beneficial to its owner is always doubtful. Why actually? Because we are used to always chasing advantages at the expense of others. Because we suspect that we always have to desire what someone else has. The wild chief believes that the life force of the enemies he kills will pass into himself. Isn't this same poor Negro belief the basis of every war, every competition, every distrust between people? No, we would be happier if we at least equated the good peasant with the soldier. If we could give up the superstition that what a person or a people gain in life and zest for life would have to be taken away from someone else. Now I hear the teachers speak. That sounds very nice, but please take a factual view of it from the national economic point of view. World production is. To which I reply, no thanks. The national economic point of view is by no means factual. It is a pair of glasses through which one can look with different results. For example, before the war, one could prove economically that a world war was impossible or could not last long. Today you can prove the opposite, also from a national economic perspective. No, let's think realities instead of these fantasies. There's nothing with these points of view. They may be called whatever they like, and they may be represented by the fattest professor. They are all black eyes. We are neither calculators nor any other mechanisms. We are people, and for humans there is only one natural point of view, only one natural yardstick. It is that of the stubborn. For him there are neither the fates of capitalism nor of socialism. For him there is no England and no America. For him there lives nothing but the silent, inevitable law in his own breast, which it is so infinitely difficult for people to find conveniently to follow. But to the stubborn, however, means fate and deity. It seems to be the case that the peoples do not learn anything, neither from lost nor from won wars. From all activities, learning seems to be what it is most difficult to achieve. What would the victors have? What could the defeated learn from the wars of 80, 70, 1914 and 1939? But this learning, it seems, is neither achieved by the peoples nor by their leading upper classes, but always only by a thin and powerless layer of intellectuals. This small and uninfluenced layer produces insights. It establishes truths, but they only find their way into the crowd in a form distorted into catchwords and a generation later. It follows from this, it seems, that despair must be the real and legitimate attitude of those who know, like life on the go and blindless, that of the people. Nevertheless, behind or above the factual and manifest. There seems to be a more real, more durable and more meaningful reality, to which our philosophies and religions seek the anticipated access, and for which it is still worthy living. Thank you.